Anyway, Netflix Castlevania. So, if you recall from last week, my opinions on the first two season, well, our opinions were kind of split. Because we both pretty much enjoyed the first season. Second season, I enjoyed because I'm a big nerd who likes long sequences of people talking. And she found that really boring, and she didn't really care about the characters. Like, Kat did not care about, like, Carmilla, for instance, like, at all. Or Isaac, or Hector. I maybe vaguely about Dracula, but she really just cared about, she liked Trevor and Sypha. I always say Sypha. No, it is Sypha. It's Sypha, and I double-checked, the kana of how her name is supposed to be spelled. It is Sypha. That's the convenient thing about being able to read basic kana. Japanese kana is it's always pronounced the same way, so you never have to worry. That's how I know that the character from KOF is called Rugal. It's Rugal, not Rugal. It's Rugal because of the way that it's spelled. There's no ambiguity. Anyway, so yeah. So season 3 was kind of like Kat told me. I think I might have even mentioned this at the end of or when I talked about the show last time. She said season 3 is going to be it's the make it or break it point, because if it's more of the same and she finds it equally as boring, she's kind of done with it. She's like, I have no desire to watch anymore. So we watched season 3 and we both liked it. We liked it quite a bit, actually. It feels like a lot of like elements from season 2, namely the talking and the very slow pace. That's one thing. If you watch Netflix Castlevania, don't expect things to happen. Don't expect things to happen necessarily every episode. Things will move forward at a very slow pace. Oh, this is going to be a full spoiler thing, so if you don't care about it, then just keep listening. But if you do, then I don't know. If you're interested in watching the show, then I guess skip to the next segment. Yeah, it's a slow-paced show. Trevor and Sypha spend essentially the entire season in one village, kind of just walking around and having a couple conversations with people. And you're sort of watching a couple little plot threads unfold throughout this. Alucard has a little subplot, which feels like filler. It feels like an excuse to. Alucard's subplot feels like it could be setting up something, but it like I could see it tying into other things throughout the season. But in many ways, for the majority of it, it feels like an excuse to keep Alucard in the show. And then there's a lot of stuff, and then the kind of third major area is Carmilla's castle with her and her little vampire oomfies and Hector. And then Isaac. Isaac's got a little thing, which Kat does not give a shit about Isaac. She does not care about that character at all. So she found that fairly boring, but overall his parts of the show aren't very long. So it wasn't too hard to stomach for her. Yeah. What would I would say? Yeah. It's weird that it's 10 episodes. It feels like it could have maybe been sped up a little bit and like compressed a little bit. But I enjoyed the slow pace again. I think what helped this season is that you get a lot more strong character dynamics. One of the things that I realize is it could be very polarizing about the second season is it's so much of it is spent in Dracula's castle without a ton of like interaction. Like Dracula's interesting, but what makes him interesting isn't like the way that he's interacting with people. It's just kind of how you kind of come to understand him through other people's views of him. Was kind of like, oh, okay, they're kind of like building this character up from afar almost. But that can be really boring because it's all just talking. It's all just conversation and not a lot of movement. I think where season 3 kind of improves upon that is the conversations are between characters who are relatively interesting. They're interesting, at least interesting enough that you're like, can you guys hear the fucking chainsaw in the background? Hang on. Okay, I'm back. Jesus. I sit down to record. Haven't recorded all day. I sit down to record, and that's when Leatherface decides to come out. Criminy. Okay. Where was I? Oh god, now I got a burp. I'm just a mess. Okay. The characters... So you get a lot more time with Trevor and Sypha, and straight up, they're just very entertaining to watch. They're very likable as kind of a main couple, and they're a couple. I thought we were both kind of taken aback by that. Where really early on in the show, like first episode, it's established. Oh, we're like, oh, so they're just like having sex now. They're just fucking. Oh, okay. Okay, they clarified it. It's not super out of the realm. It's like, Trevor goes like, he has some beer because he loves beer. And he goes, oh, this is better than sex. And so Sypha's like, better than what? And then later on, we just cut to a scene where it's like morning and they're waking up next to each other in bed completely naked. And we're like, oh, okay, all right. And that's not out of the question. I mean, you could kind of tell, like, you can, especially in the way they make it they write it to be believable, where it's like, I could see how these two people, they're kind of at odds, but they like each other. And you're on the road and it's like cold and you're in like fucking Eastern Europe with monsters. It might be nice to get laid every once in a while. I realized I was thinking about it, and I'm like, how many times do you think Trevor has had sex before, like, season 3? How many, like, how often? Because his family died when he was, like, 14, and he's just kind of been wandering around. Like, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, he's been pretty much alone as far as I can tell. As far as they've established, the only way that I could imagine Trevor having sex in the time between like seasons, like from like his whole life up to like season 3, I guess, would be like hiring a prostitute, I guess. Is that in character for him? I don't know. Maybe? I don't know. I feel like there's a non-zero chance that Trevor was like a virgin until season 3. That's just my little headcanon? Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I thought that was fun. I think that they actually have a fun dynamic as a couple. It's just that Trevor's kind of sullen and serious and sort of not quite stoic, but yeah, he's kind of a little more of a downer. He's faster to. He looks more at like the worst possible scenario first, and Sypha's like the inverse of that. She's better at talking to people. She wants to be friends with people. She's a little more positive. She kind of teases him and ribs him, and then he kind of smiles a little bit, and it's like, oh, that's cute. Okay, yeah, they work as a couple, and they're pretty enjoyable to watch. They go to a village. There's some priests who are also super into hell. They're like Christians, I guess, maybe, but they're super into hell. And they have this newfangled idea that hell is actually, it's like Drake says, God's plan. God's plan. And so it's like, oh, is something devious happening with them? I wonder. Yeah, something devious is happening with them. And there's a character from the games, Saint-Germain. Saint-Germain, so he's like this world traveler, immortal scholar guy. I feel like his character was a bit of a miss in terms of not necessarily the writing, but I think the performance kind of let me down. The voice actor does a fine job, but I feel like I wish that he had been played a little more eccentric. Like, some of the dialogue is like just a little, it's a little like, he's kind of funny. I feel like he should be kind of an eccentric. Not like super wacky goofy, but just like a little played up, a little more maybe charming or charismatic. The voice actor plays him really serious and like, that's how everyone in the show sounds. And it's mostly that the whole show, and I wish he just had like a little more personality, like a bit of a stronger personality. He felt a little bland, and I wasn't just. He's a little boring, not very exciting. He gets into some interesting situations with the monks where he's like kind of infiltrating. He's convincing them to let him go into their priory and read their spooky books and all that. And yeah, there's some fine stuff done with him. I really think it just came down to the presentation the delivery of like the character, like the literal acting. I think that, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't really gel with the actor's interpretation of the character. What else? Oh, all the stuff with Carmilla's castle. So as soon as I was like, okay, so we're going to be spending a decent amount of time with Carmilla. And I know Kat really did not care about her. However, then the big muscly vampire lady walked on screen, and Kat went, yo! And then her brown vampire lady girlfriend walked on screen, and Kat went, yo! and interestingly enough, Carmilla's not really in season 3 very much. She's there. She's honestly like more of a supporting character, and her little oomphies are kind of, you get a lot more about them, and they're decently interesting. You kind of see the way that they work together, the way that they have different sorts of, you see how their personalities all kind of mixed together. The fact that I forget their names, except for the Belle Delphine one, Lenore. I think her name is Lenore. That's the only one whose name I remember. But Muscle Lady and Brown Lady, when they have like these little romantic moments, I'm like, oh, I feel like this is pretty well written. Like, I believe that they're like in love and shit. Just in love and shit. And I can see like how they like balance it. Like, the writers are pretty good at writing characters who are in relationships, as far as I can see. And I liked that. This interaction. The other thing, so I don't think Kat particularly cared for Hector. However, he spends most of the season naked, so she liked that. There's like one shot, I swear you can see his dick. I swear. And we both caught it for like 1 second. There's like, he stands up, and you're like, is that it? Oh, is that it? The fact that there's a lot of weird sex stuff in this season, like a lot more than I was expecting. Beyond, okay, that did catch me way off guard. Just having like, because when like, Trevor and Sifa are in bed, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, the existence of sex is acknowledged, right? I wasn't expecting like a full frontal nudity sex scene. 2 parallel scenes back to back that really caught both of us off guard. Man, so there's like 2 scenes where in the show so far, there's 2 scenes where Alucard cries. The first one is after he's just killed his father, and he's sitting alone in this empty castle with only really the memories of his father and mother and his childhood, all alone, and he's basically left to just pick up the pieces of his life and try to kind of make something of it. And in this moment, he just kind of breaks down and has to let it out and just starts weeping and just sobbing, right? The second time Alucard cries is when he's getting a sloppy double blowjob from a pair of Asian twins. Someone just fucking come in the house as soon as I said that. Yeah. That caught the both of us really off guard. So Alucard has this whole plot, this whole subplot, where he's at the castle and he's just kind of doing his thing, living his life. He's going insane from isolation and grief. And then all of a sudden, these two Japanese siblings arrive at the castle. They've come from Japan, and they want to learn. They were the subjects, they were the slaves of this vampire mistress in the Nihon, and they want to learn. They escaped, and they want to learn how to fight vampires. And he's like, yeah, actually, I kind of like that idea. I think I'll... Yeah, that like give like maybe I can get some kind of a purpose. I can interact with people. I can teach people things. I can make use of all this knowledge, like Trevor encouraged me to do. And you're kind of going through the show, and you can see their relationship building up, and like, oh, he's kind of like, I was like, oh, he's kind of like a mentor. They're kind of like friends, or almost like a parental figure even. Just these kind of like cute, fun scenes of him teaching them like fighting and stuff like that, walking them through the castle, showing them these ancient technologies and magics and stuff, and they're asking him these questions, and he can't really answer them, or he's like, we'll get to that later, or it's a long story and that kind of thing. Like, why can't the castle be teleported? And he's like, fucking bitch. And they're like, what? He says, no, never mind. So like, you know, things are kind of like, so they're these twins, they're talking, they're like on their own. I think they're doing some kind of practice thing, and they're like, we should do something for Alucard. We should do something because you know, we should like make a little gift for him. Someone's out right outside my fucking door, and I don't want to talk about this when they're right outside my door. And they kind of like, I'm like, okay. So there's this scene, right? And this is like near the end, kind of like the second season. The majority of it is like really slow. And then in like the last 4 episodes, things kind of start to happen. God fucking damn it. Someone's right outside my door. I don't want to talk about this. Okay, I'm pausing until they're gone. Okay, people are gone. There's kind of like this big climactic, like a lot of different threads are coming are coming to a head. coming to a head. You got Trevor and Sypha the confronting these monks. You have Isaac, basically, Isaac's on some journey. He can't get to Carmilla yet. He wants to go kill Carmilla throughout the season, but he's basically like, oh, I need an army to do that, so I have to like fight this wizard who's mind controlling this entire town so that I can turn everyone in the town into monsters. And it's this big like struggle fight he has to get up this wizard's tower. What else is happening? And then, right, and then Hector, who's spent basically the entire season, Belle Delphine vampire, has been basically like buttering him up, being like, basically getting him to like simp for her, putting a collar on him and shit, and like giving him food and stuff. And then she basically is like, hey, you want to have sex? And we were like, whoa, oh, okay. And then like they start showing out, and we're like, whoa! And then we cut to Alucard. He can't sleep. He's in bed. Two Asian twins come in, and they're in like nightgowns, and I'm like, okay, are they gonna like give him like a present or something? I was imagining, because they were talking about like making food or something. I was like, oh, they're gonna like make him a meal or something, right? This is kind of like a weird time to do that. It's like a Japanese thing. And then like they walk to the bed, and they're not like holding anything, and I'm like, okay. And then they like sit down, and there's these like shots that are very like, this is like a little intimate. And then I'm like, I'm waiting for the moment for them to like subvert. I'm like, nah, I'm just like being weird. They're like siblings, right? They're not gonna, right? There's gonna like at the last, I'm waiting for them to like pull out something that they made or something like that for some kind of gift for him. And then it's gonna be like, oh, fun, happy, cute, sweet. And then they start taking their clothes off, and we're like, whoa! But we both started popping off. And there's like this really into all these scenes are happening back to back, essentially, of just like fucking crazy violence, monster slaughter, Isaac just stabbing people with knives, and then just 2 sex scenes happening, and then just like full nudity. Well, not full. As far as you can go without, I would say it probably pushes as far as you can go without being straight up pornography. They don't show any genitals. That's kind of the only restraint that they have. You get full nip, and you get as much of a man as you can show. without having to censor yourself in Japan. It's so graphic. We were like losing our shit. What we're like, whoa! We're like, this is awesome. And it's like, it's just, what the fuck? I was not expecting a bisexual incestuous threesome. That really threw me off my game. Is this Castlevania? Man, that puts Symphony of the Night into like a whole new perspective. Holy shit. And like they're straight up like there's a shot. They don't show them sucking his dick or anything, but they it's like it's you just see their heads, like, you know, down there, and then it just cuts to Alucard and tears are forming in his eyes. Dude, pussy had me floating. He's just and then kind of the climax is not, well, it's not a real both sex scenes end in, maybe you could call them anti-climaxes, some blue balls. 2 back-to-back betrayals. They betray him out of nowhere. They put these like silver rings on his what are they called? Wrists. I can't remember what the wrists were called on the body. And that like bind him up. And I'm like, okay, this is either like they're betraying him or they're getting really kinky. But no, they're actually going to try to kill him because they don't trust him or something. And I'm like, this is like really, I feel like you didn't have to like suck his dick that much to betray him in this moment. Like you could also, where did they get those rings? Were they like hiding them in their anal cavities or something? What was it? They were completely naked. And then Hector, fucking the Belle Delphine vampire, she puts a little mind control ring. It's not like a mind control ring, but it like forces him. I guess it is. I haven't seen it. We haven't seen like really enough of how it works. But he isn't like a zombie or anything. But he has like consciousness, cognizance. Like he could tell. Like he knows what happened. I guess it just forces him to do things, basically. He doesn't have control over his will, basically, if that... maybe, I guess that's sort of how it works. And like in the like the final moment, and then like yeah, it's like it feels it's like I see the point. They don't feel entirely gratuitous. They feel like, hey, let's draw some titties. You get some Belle Delphine vampire e-girl boobies. So, and a lot of Hector's back and man ass. I don't know. I feel Hector's kind of Hector's like they've got this whole thing. From the second season, from the time he was introduced, they kind of established that he's a bit of like he just kind of goes along with people. He's like easily influenced. Isaac, these vampire mommy head pats got me questioning my allegiance to Dracula. And now it's just basically full circle. He's literally pussy whipped. He's literally a lot of characters. When I think about the things that happened in season 3, some people in the comments of last episode described season 3 as I think someone described it as a filler season. It's not quite. There's fillery elements. It's more just so that the things that happen, the important things that happen, are more so to do with the characters changing or being pushed in certain directions as opposed to the state of the world changing. Excuse me. So, like, not a lot of stuff changes, really. Isaac has kind of advanced his plan a little bit. Carmilla basically has Hector set up to make her a bunch of monsters. Trevor and Sypha have basically a side quest. But really what changes is that characters are kind of being pushed in different directions. And kind of in opposing directions. So, one thing, I haven't really talked about Trevor and Sypha's thing yet, but I've sort of mentioned, that's kind of the broad strokes. It's not super complicated. What's going on with the monks? Oh, they're trying to summon a demon. Or open a portal to hell, that's specifically what they want, so they can bring Dracula back. They interact with this character who's like the mayor, basically, of this town. He's the governor of the town. He's called Judge, or the Judge. And they're having these interactions with him. They kind of like befriend him. He's like an ally of theirs. He kind of sends them to look after go kind of investigate the monks and things like that. And then in this final giant monster battle where all these demons are pouring out of this gate, everyone gets really fucked up. In order to like open the portal, the entire town basically gets set on fire. Like everyone dies. Everyone gets burned to a crisp. The only people who are spared are like these soldiers that the judge has basically this militia that he's basically organized to confront the friars. And Trevor and Sypha. They're basically, actually they aren't even spared. Most of the soldiers die, if not all of them. The head of the monks dies. He like stabs Judge. He stabs him in the gut or something. And then Judge basically says, "Hey, okay, so they set this thing up, right? They have this scene kind of earlier on where Judge is like walking around town, and this kid is running around. He goes, "Hey, no running in the town." And the kid is like, "I'm looking for apples," or something like that. And the judge tells him, "Hey, I can tell you where to get apples." And he gives him basically a list of directions to get to an apple tree just outside of town. Runs off. You don't really. I'm like, oh, okay. And now there's this scene, right, when Trevor and Sypha go to talk to Judge, where he's in his house. He's got this little house of his own, and it's a little tucked away. It's a little ways away from the rest of the town. And when he hears the knock on the door, he's like walking out of a room in his house, and there's this very intentional shot of him looking into the room and kind of like wiping his hands, and you can't see into the room, and he has this kind of expression, like kind of strained expression on his face, like he's just done something kind of stressful or something like that. And then he hears the knock on the door. He closes the door to the room he was just in, goes and greets them. Scene proceeds as normal. Nothing weird, right? So the head of the head friar, as he stabs him, judge tells him, "Hey, go to." I could tell you how to get to safety. The friar's like, "Why would you tell me that?" And he's like, I don't know. And or he kind of like reverse psychologies him, like he thinks that he's accepted the friar's beliefs in his like last moments or something like that. And he gives him the same directions he gave to the kid. And I'm like, okay, this is obviously a setup for something. Like something's gonna happen. But I thought it was weird because they haven't really acknowledged it, right? It's just there's a couple little crumbs that maybe there's something kind of odd with the judge, but they never really lean into it. You never hear anything else. There's nothing that really sets it off, right? And I made a joke of that scene where he's coming out of the room and you don't see what's in the room, right? And I think I was like, oh, that's his like this is like boy trap hole or something like that. He's like a pedophile, and Trevor and Sypha, they like overhear the battle's basically over. They overhear, I think, the directions that he gave to the friar, and then they decide, they're like, fuck, well, everyone's dead. Fuck. Well, at least the evil people are dead too, right? At least the monks basically all got torn apart. And they decide to go investigate what the judge was talking about, and they find this apple tree, and they spot this like trap floor in the ground, and they kind of like pull this it's like straw or hay, or it's like this little literally this little like trap hole cover. They open it up and they see that underneath there's a pit of spikes with the friar. And I'm like, whoa, wait, I was joking about like the little boy hole. The little boy capture hole. Hang on, what? And they see there's like clothes at the bottom. They're like, what the fuck? They go to the judge's house. They go inside because he told them to burn it. And Trevor's like, maybe let's just check in. So let me just investigate. They walk in, and then they look inside the room, the mystery room, which was right when they were in the friar's house. Sorry, not the friar. In the judge's house, was right behind him. Like, the door was right behind him as they were talking to him. And they look inside, and it's a collection. There's like a dozen small pairs of shoes. Like child shoes. And they're like, what the fuck? They're looking around, and then they connect the dots, and they're like, the trap hole, the shoes. Trevor remembers a conversation he has with the judge about how, like, when like a child goes missing, it's big news. And they're like, the clothes at the bottom of the pit. There's like bones at the bottom, and they're like, oh, what the fuck? What the fuck? And then they just burn the house down. And there was like a bit where I was like, why was this even in the show? I genuinely did not understand, like, okay, what is the purpose of this twist? Like, why is this here? Because it's so intentional, right? It feels like this thing that easily could have not been included. You easily could have written it to not be like that. It's so intentional that, like, they have this scene of the kid. They have this conversation with Trevor, where the guy mentions that. They have the scene where they find the trap. They found the scene where the part where he tells the friar to go to the trap. The whole thing, like, why is this in the show? I didn't understand. I'm like, why was this necessary at all, except just to make you feel bad as an audience? and then there's a scene, like one of the last scenes is Trevor and Sypha, and they're rolling out of town on their wagon. And at the beginning of the season, Sypha was talking about how it would be a fun little adventure. Oh, you know, because that's been their whole time together up to that point, just these adventures. And yeah, it gets serious and life-threatening, but it's like an adventure, and it's relatively uncomplicated, right? You're fighting demons and monsters and people who want to wipe out humanity. It's not very difficult. It's a pretty black and white situation. And then they're pulling out of town. It's gloomy, and Sypha is like, God, this fucking sucks. And Trevor has a line about how, like, this whole time we've been living in your world, now you're gonna live in mine for a little bit. And that was kind of when it clicked a little bit for me, and I was like, oh. This season overall is about characters who are either optimists or pessimists starting to look into getting a taste of, like, the other side of, like, the other outlook, essentially. Sypha has like, she's a little naive. Right? Like, kind of some of her optimism comes from her naivete, that she's been in kind of this traveling group of nomads, and they're like these spiritualists, and like, yeah, there's complicated things, but that's because people are ignorant and things like that, and that's why they persecute us and all that, and her world up to this point has been pretty easy to understand overall. And she's pretty intelligent. She's, like, noted by other characters as being pretty, like, an intelligent person. So this isn't, like, because she's obviously, like, a smart person. This isn't because she doesn't have this outlook because she's just dumb and that. It's just she doesn't have, like, experience with this situation where, like, fuck, everyone innocent died in a fire. And the guy we thought was cool was actually a serial child slayer. The world is kind of fucked up. And it's not ignorance, right? It wasn't ignorance that he did those things out of. He just liked doing it. He just liked enjoying it. He just enjoyed killing children. He was just fucked up. And like, that's difficult for her to reconcile, that this person who she had so many normal interactions with, that she saw as, like, a relatively good person, was actually this horrible monster that just behind the scenes that she never knew. And you have these other pretty much, I want to say almost every other major character has, like, some form of this, right? Sypha might be the most dramatic, but if you look at Alucard, I think Alucard and Hector actually have very, very similar kind of experiences where they come to trust people and even like them. I think especially in Alucard's case, where he felt some, like, empathy and affection for the twins, and then in their literally their most intimate moments, they're betrayed. Like, the most intimate you could get, literally they're having sex. They are abjectly betrayed. in the most severe way. They try to kill them or enslave them, and reveal that their feelings were like, in many ways, a hoax. You know, Belle Delphine didn't really like Hector. She was doing it. She was doing it to control him and to further Carmilla's plan. The Twids probably did like Alucard, probably did legitimately like him, but have turned their backs on him. And I kind of liked that. From their perspective, their motivation at least makes sense. Like in their logic, they say like, you won't tell us this, you won't tell us that. You're keeping things from us. We don't trust you. We're gonna kill you. The things that they're talking about are things that the audience already knows. The audience already understands. We already know why, you know, the castle can't move, because Sypha melted the gears accidentally in season 2. You basically know why he can't teach them magic, because it's not that simple. They've been together like what, a week or two? He can't just jump into teaching these people magic right away. But like, I can see from their point of view how they would make sense that they wouldn't trust him. They obviously take it way too far, and they shouldn't have fucking killed him. But I can also kind of see, like, if you've been like a slave to a vampire for years, how you might have kind of a maybe you take, but maybe like an extreme approach to distrust. If there's even a hint, right, that someone's gonna betray you, you just fucking kill them. And Alucard, you know, he summons his floaty magic sword, fucking cuts their throats, and he's just covered in their blood. And he's like, and the end of the season is him pushed into a very far, like much more like his father, to be honest, like in that very misanthropic, jaded, bitter way, where these people who were kind of his only relief from his solitude that was driving him insane, ended up betraying him, and because of just a misunderstanding, just like they're just like this aspect of human nature, just a simple misunderstanding and jumping the gun, basically, betrayed him, and he fucking impales them like Vlad the Impaler style. They have a little reference to Dracula being based on Vlad the Impaler. He says like, oh, just like father used to do. Impales them like through, I think the classic, I think the Vlad way was through the rectum up through the mouth. So the spikes coming out of the mouth. And he basically puts them up outside the castle as basically like warning signs that this is what happens to people who cross him. There's this like brutal side of him that's been brought out by this betrayal. And then in the opposite end, you have, funny enough, Trevor, who you've kind of been seeing as the show goes on. But funny enough, Isaac a little bit. Trevor's kind of been going in this direction where he's kind of softening up a little, and that kind of comes from like some of Sypha's influence, right? There's a moment where like he tells Saint Germain that like, hey, because Saint Germain's looking for like the interdimensional portal, and he tells Saint Germain like, oh yeah, we can help you, and or he kind of says it in this way where like, hey, we figured out that, like, this thing, yada yada, and also if you come with us, you can find the portal so you can find your friend who was lost in, like, the dimensional portal thing. And he's like, oh, are you gonna, like, oh, you're just, like, helping me straight up? And he's like, yeah, like, don't mention it. Like, just shut up, just be cool about it, dude. Like, don't be fucking weird about it. It's like, okay, Trevor's becoming less misanthropic, right? He's becoming a little he'll go out of his way to help someone, even though he kind of finds Saint Germain sort of annoying. He's not like super on board with him. He's just like, okay, maybe this guy's kind of interesting. He's kind of neutral, a little cold towards him, but he'll help him out, and it's just kind of like out of the this kindness. but he's all tough. He's a tough guy, so he doesn't want to like show it, right? Like, okay. And then Isaac is straight up like, oh yeah, he wants to kill humanity. He wants like full, where Hector was kind of assumed, he even says he kind of assumed that Dracula just sort of wanted to control the human population and just kind of, you know, cull them down. Isaac just wants everyone to die. He just hates humanity, straight up. He's like a super nihilist. And his whole mission is, I think it's interesting. Again, Kat doesn't like this character. She doesn't care about him. I think he's interesting in these little glimpses you get into his thought process. Because he has to, so he goes into this town, he gets like this magic mirror from this old kind of like, kind of magical antiques dealer. And the dealer tells this kind of joke, and Isaac kind of laughs at it. He's like, oh, tells this joke about like, oh, if he gives him this as a gift, maybe it'll save his soul from hell or something like that. Or like, because I'm definitely going to hell. And Isaac actually kind of finds it funny. And he's like, thanks for the gift. And then he goes off, immediately gets confronted, because he's just rolling around with a whole crew of demons. Immediately gets confronted by the like town, it's just like port town. Confronted by their like militia. And he's like, just, if you don't cause me trouble, I'll let you pass. They're like, no, they're monsters. We're gonna get out. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll just kill everyone in this town and turn you all into monsters. Fuck you, I guess. Just super bitter. And he has this line about like, you know, I don't know why I give people the benefit of the doubt, because they're always just assholes. People are just always assholes to me, and they just suck. So he goes, he basically commandeers the ship, or he doesn't commandeer it specifically. He talks with the captain, and the captain's this kind of like older guy. Struck me as like Caribbean or African. I couldn't figure out like his accent quite. He has like kind of an interesting accent. And he starts talking to him, and he basically says like, well, Isaac's just gonna kill the whole crew and the captain and take the ship. And the captain's like, okay, but like, do you know how to steer a ship? And he's like, can't be that hard, right? And the captain's like, if it's not that hard, then why do ships have captains? Why do I even have a profession? And Isaac's like, okay, point taken. We'll make an agreement. You know, my monsters won't kill your guys or you, and you'll take us to Genoa, because he's trying to hunt down Carmilla. He's on a revenge quest. He's gonna go kill Carmilla. And they have this conversation on the boat about essentially like Isaac's philosophy and some of the shortcomings or the blind spots that the captain sees in it. And I liked it because Isaac is a character who acts very much like he's got everything figured out, like he knows how the whole world works, basically. And the captain is basically like, well, you know that there's like, you know, like kindness exists, right? Like kindness and people who are good-hearted. Like that the shopkeeper who sold you, or not, didn't even sold, just gifted you this magic mirror that you needed, and told like a funny joke, and you recognize that like humanity has that capacity. And Isaac is like, yeah, but like it doesn't matter, right? Because people are misled and they fucking suck. And the captain's like, well, if you, like, ultimately, like, you want to kill everyone because you think that humanity sucks. But if humanity didn't suck, you wouldn't have to do that. And Isaac's like, yeah, I guess. And the captain's like, well, how would you get humanity to not suck? You would have to, like, set up some kind of a precedent. And he basically plants this little seed in Isaac's head where he says, basically, if you control, like if you conquer some part of the world, right? You overthrow them, right? You become like a conqueror, you become a leader, And if you're a leader, yeah, I guess you could just kill everyone, but you could also teach people how to be the way you wish they were. And Isaac kind of has a little think about that. And it's not been like, it's just a setup. It's just a setup, and I'm assuming that it's going to be explored more in season 4. I hope it is, because I think that's an interesting idea. I like it when characters who are extremely confident are not treated like they're right all the time. I feel like it's so easy as a writer to write a character who just believes what you believe and then make them super confident and then no one ever argues with them. I like the fact that Isaac is very confident in his ideology and his worldview, and then he has this character who kind of subverts that and kind of questions it and kind of like makes his foundation a little shaky, basically. I think that's like, I like moments like that where a character sort of has to not exactly swallow their pride. Like, he isn't embarrassed or humbled. And the captain's saying this out of like a belief in the things that he's saying. Also, he probably doesn't want to get murdered by demons when Isaac takes over the world. But he has to like kind of stop and think, maybe I am a little wrong, right? Maybe there's a little more to it that maybe I'm not like as enlightened or wise as I thought I was. Maybe I don't know everything there is to know. And I like that. I appreciated that. As like a little character moment. So you have, I think, any other examples? Any other examples? I'm trying to think of characters kind of shifting at their points. I think that those are kind of like the main characters who really go through some shifts. Unless there's a character who's so forgettable that, no, I think that's pretty much everyone. Excuse me. What else? The action's still pretty good. It's there's like a weird scene. There's like a weird shot. It's not even a scene, it's a shot. It's when they're in the friary or the priory or whatever it's called. And it's the big battle scene with all the monsters pouring out of the portal. And Trevor, like, he gets knocked down and he stands back up. And in this one shot where he's like getting up off the ground, he's like CG. He's clearly CG. And it's super weird. I was like, it's like the climactic moment. It's like this kind of sick ass moment where he pulls out, because he's been using the Morning Star, like the chain whip with like the holy fire ever since like season 2. And he pulls out, there's this big ass like angel demon and that he's fighting. And he pulls out the original whip, the like rope whip from like season 1 and I guess early season 2. And he's using both of that. And this one shot where he's just CG as he's getting up, it's like right before this huge, like a ton of, like a real like Sakuga moment where like all the like whips, like, whipping, I guess, is that the verb? The momentum and like the crazy color changes as like the whole room is engulfed in light and shit, and boom, like this big final epic maneuver he does. And right before it, he's full CG, and I was so distracted by that it kind of distracted me from the cool animation. Other than that, yeah. It's animation's still really solid. Everything that's good, the things that are the show has been pretty consistent so far in that the things that are good about it are consistently pretty good. And the things that I could see being polarizing, honestly, I think I talked about this, but it kind of improved throughout the 3rd season. Just kind of more characters that are a little more interesting. Every conversation that Hector had with Belle Delphine Vampire was intriguing because you yourself are kind of trying to figure out what her motive is. She tells him up front that she's like a diplomat, and she's like basically the talker of the group. That's her role. So every scene with them, it's kind of a classic. Like, what's their intentions, right? Like, what does she want? Is she being like, does she legitimately like him? What's going on? And then it ends up that like, okay, yeah, no, she was kind of just leading him on the whole time. She's an evil e-girl. She puts on the ring that forces him to subscribe to her OnlyFans. And she's basically going to keep him as a sex slave. She literally says like, it's kind of interesting because it isn't like full on cruelty. She says, because they have this thing like, okay, she goes, okay, what did you think you were going to get out of your relationship with Dracula? Do you really think he wasn't going to kill you? And he's like, I mean, like, maybe like honor code, right? Like bro code, right? and she's like, no, that's like, you should probably get something in return. And that's kind of like the one of the ins that she gets with him is that one of the ways that she kind of tricks him or lowers his guard is that she gives him things, and she actually kind of, she butters him up a little bit with these sorts of rewards and gifts and things like that. And in her mind, that's just like diplomacy, and that's like her game. That's her evil. Is that she'll give you something, but she's going to take a lot more from you. So she'll give him like a cabin and food, and he doesn't have to lie naked in a cold prison eating like moldy cheese. But in return, he has to create demons for Carmilla's army, and Belle Delphine is going to force him to have sex with her by basically manipulating his will using the ring, which is really fucked up. Just like really fucked up. Yeah, so I can see the clear, like, I know that it's like a 4-season basically storyline. So I can see the where it's generally where it's going. I imagine that season 4, which I'll get back to you guys next week with, because we're gonna watch that over the weekend again. We're gonna finish it over the weekend. My predictions, I imagine for season 4, some of you guys, someone told me, I think Ryan told me in the comments that seasons 3 and 4 are just kind of like loosely adapting and taking stuff from Curse of Darkness. So I can't really look up the plot, which is funny because Saint Germain in season 3 felt like a minor forgettable character from a video game. He felt like that. I don't know how to describe it. He feels like a character like that, who just kind of has their little side plot, and then you kind of see it resolve. And I don't know. He felt like that. So I can't just look up what happens to just know what's gonna happen in the game. Just know what's gonna happen in the show. They're basically setting up that, well, now Isaac's gonna have a big army. I imagine he's gonna attack Carmilla. I imagine there's gonna be something between him and Hector as now rival forge masters. There could maybe be some kind of there's like a billion different ways that like that interaction could go. I have no idea what Trevor and Sypha are gonna be doing in the next season. Apparently it has a lot of action according to you guys, so that's cool. It's also a different production studio. It's a different animation studio, and I'm kind of curious what it looks like. I haven't really checked it out yet, so I don't know exactly if it's significantly different. I guess they animate more action. Yeah, I genuinely like don't know what they're not. It's every character but them is kind of like set up to go somewhere, which I think is weird because they're ostensibly the main characters. From a character perspective, I can see where they're going, but not like objective wise. They're just kind of going from town to town. I can probably see, like, I imagine that this big thing that happens between Isaac and Carmilla that they're setting up ropes Trevor and Sypha into this, and potentially Alucard. Maybe they need to give him like an excuse to be in the show, basically. Maybe he even sides with Isaac. Maybe he even sides with Isaac and decides to hate humanity. Whatever the case, I am looking forward to it. I enjoyed it. Kat enjoyed it. Oh, and I hope that there's more full-on nudity in season 4. God damn, I talked about that for like an hour. It's an interesting show. I think that's pretty much everything I had to say about it.